Hello and welcome to the Help Is Here podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about why some people do stay stuck in a porn addiction for decades. You know, we have worked with guys who have stayed stuck in this addiction for, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and actually some guys who have been in this addiction for over 50 years. So it's a long time, right? And if you're in that situation where maybe it's been as long as 50 years with this problem, what I want you to know is there's nothing wrong with you. And I know this is a bit of a cliche now in like the porn addiction recovery world. Like everyone's always like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's okay, whatever. But I'm saying this from like a neuroplasticity lens. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of neuroscience. I think it can only take you so far with actually solving this problem. However, what I do know is that if you act on desire, if you act on compulsive desire in particular, right, what's going to happen is you're going to wire your neural pathways. So you become like more and more sort of dependent on the mind mood altering experience that you achieve through acting on the desire. So that temporary relief from the withdrawal. And what can happen is basically your neural pathways change and you become wired to want to engage in that behaviour more and more and more. And what we have is we basically have a epidemic of misinformation online on porn addiction recovery. So most advice is not going to focus on the present moment. Most advice is going to kind of reinforce neural pathways of helplessness. So what I mean by that is it's going to train you to believe that you don't have the ability to be in control of yourself when you have desires, hence the need for things like blockers, hence the need for you to remove triggers, hence the need for you to stay busy. These sort of thought patterns just really install this belief that you do not have the ability to be in control of yourself. And that's really the whole problem when you kind of break it down. It's like the problem with porn addiction is you feel like out of control. You feel like you don't have control of yourself. So what we need to do is shift the thinking, shift the belief, and have a system so we can always be in control of ourselves moment by moment and use the rational part of our mind to make good choices that actually serve our long-term health, happiness, and peace of mind, right? But what happens, right, is we have these different parts in the mind. So we have the addicted part of the mind, and the addicted part of the mind just wants one thing. It wants you to engage in your compulsive behaviour. And if you've been stuck for decades, it's going to start pulling some, strategies on you, which really, really get you like questioning yourself. They get you feeling even more helpless. And then eventually they kind of get you to go, oh, well, to hell with it. This is just who I am. There's just something wrong with me. And I'm always going to be like this. That's what the addicted part of the mind wants. And what I want to get across is that the addicted part of the mind is a liar. It says so much bullshit. I've probably relapsed to porn over 1,000 times before I learned the Beyond Compulsion method. And in those 10 years of relapsing, very frequently, every single time, I would fall for some kind of bullshit or another. One peak won't hurt. Oh, this will be the last time. I'm never going to do it again. Oh, this doesn't count. It's just on Instagram. So I would fall for all these lies, all this bullshit. And these thoughts around, this is just who you are. You've been stuck with this for so many years. You're going to be like this forever. These are just the same sort of things. They're just thought patterns that come from the part of your mind that want you to engage in the compulsive behavior. The other thing where people go wrong is they start searching for some kind of deep inner wound to like resolve, right? And I can tell you from experience, like I got into meditation very deeply. I was doing an hour every day. I got into things like internal family systems very deeply, got into acceptance commitment therapy. So I got into like quite a few different therapies. I was going to the Buddhist center. I did quite a lot of internal work on myself, right? But throughout all of that, and sure, maybe, it improved my life quite a lot in different areas, I still would relapse because there'd become these moments like where I was maybe like just stressed out with something as mundane as my work, and I'd be like, this is really tough, or I'd get rejected by a girl or whatever it was, and I'd end up feeling like a lot of discomfort still. And maybe, you could say, okay, you still maybe not like mastered yourself in whatever, like random therapy or whatever it is. But then I'd still have like this compulsive desire, like this desire in my actual mind, and the addicted part of the mind would still try and find a way to get me to relapse. And then you might be thinking, okay, well, maybe you've not done enough internal healing work, and maybe we need to get into the root of the trauma, right? And I've gone down that path, for years as well. But here's the thing. I then got to a position where I'd done so much work on myself. I felt pretty good. I was pretty happy. And then, if I like see a fit girl on the street and I go back to my apartment, all I'm thinking about is that fit girl and how much I want to like masturbate and watch porn. So it's like those neural pathways of compulsivity, they're there in the brain, right? And they can be changed due to neuroplasticity. But what isn't going to solve this problem is going back 50 years away from the present moment where we actually have a choice and we can think things through rationally. Instead, what's going to change the neural pathways and actually rewire the brain is moment by moment making good rational decisions in the face of the desire. So when you have that desire, if you're able to experience it without acting on it, that's actually going to change that neural pathway a little bit. And you do this repeatedly over and over and over. And those neural pathways really do change. And you get into a really solid position where you feel very comfortable talking about the problem perhaps, or you just feel comfortable knowing that, yeah, if I have a desire, I know how to deal with that. But it can take some real training and quite a lot of work. This stuff isn't easy. I know I talk about it like it can be easy sometimes. It isn't. This can be really challenging. There can be a lot of discomfort there. And there's a lot of education as well. I've learned so much to get to this position now over the last 2 years, right? But here's the thing. Here's the key thing that I wanted to just get across in this video is the reason people end up relapsing for years and years and years. And it seems a bit simplistic, maybe a bit reductionist. But the real reason is because every time you relapse, you strengthen those addictive neural pathways. Like, that's just neuroplasticity in action. Like, that's how the brain works. So you relapse, now you've just trained your brain to want to engage in that behavior again in the future. And what I see guys do is, as I say, they're looking for a reason to understand why they still have the desires after 50 years. The only reason is because you've acted on the desire 5,000 times in the past, which has wired your brain to keep on wanting to engage in this behavior. If you learn a way to stop engaging in the behavior, if you learn a way to actually experience that temporary discomfort of the desire, think it through rationally, and you master the addictive part of your mind in a moment of compulsive desire, your mind can be pretty blown. You can be like, whoa, hang on, I actually can deal with the desire. The paradigm shifts and you start to build up self-trust. And then you do this repeatedly over and over and over, and you realize that you can actually break out of this problem and feel really, really good and feel really comfortable and stay stopped moment by moment and feel good about that process of doing so. It doesn't have to be a life sentence where you're stuck for decades. But if you fall for the biggest lie really on the internet today, which is that relapse is part of recovery, slip-ups happen, all this helpless bullshit, you are probably going to stay stuck in that cycle that most people on the internet are stuck in, where they're just going on streaks and they stop for a few weeks or a few months. They're like, I've made a bit of progress here. And then they relapse again. And it's like they don't seem to get, and don't get me wrong, I didn't understand this for 10 years. I had to really, really seek answers online for a long time before I learned this from Mary Paulus, who I believe has the answer to this problem. But you have to really seek online to discover that. But I didn't understand, and most people don't understand, that the reason they stay stuck is simply because relapsing is the thing that creates more desire to engage in the behavior again. And so the cycle just continues and continues and continues. And the real antidote to this is just understanding that relapses are not part of recovery. Slip-ups don't happen, and it is possible to always be in control of yourself moment by moment and experience desires without acting on them. And the desire isn't even really the problem. It's how we respond that actually matters. But we're never going to get to that stage if we keep doing the conventional things, like trying to remove the triggers, trying to get away from the desire, staying busy, and basically conditioning and brainwashing our own brain into believing that we can't deal with the desire. It's experiencing the desire without acting on it. That's what's going to change your brain. That's what's going to get you to the other side of this problem and help you live your life freely. All right. And if you take one thing away from this, especially if you've been in this problem for decades, I would just love you to know that there isn't anything wrong with you. I genuinely believe, because of all the reasons I've explained today, that the information online is making this problem worse for the majority of men. And that's a strong stance to take. And a lot of people think, oh, why can't you collaborate with all these other people trying to help people? And sure, I think there's a lot of great people trying to help people. I think the intentions are good a lot of the time. But due to the methodology and this misunderstanding around relapses and this misunderstanding around, the desire like being the problem, when I believe it's how we respond that's the problem, right? These misunderstandings just conflict so much with the philosophy that we teach and the philosophy that's transformed my life. I'm very passionate about sharing, some really, really key first principles that I've been taught through the Beyond Compulsion method that I have undergone, the training that I've had. And it's a very different perspective to take, but hopefully this can give some hope, and hopefully, you can see that there is nothing wrong with you. It's been, the method's failing you, and the only reason you've stayed stuck isn't due to like you needing to do more and more and more work on yourself, but simply that you haven't been taught how to deal with desires in that critical moment when you really actually want to engage in this behavior. You probably haven't been taught how do you actually deal with that so you can change your brain. That's what it comes down to, all right? Because once you've learned how to deal with that desire in that critical, inevitable moment when you want to engage in that behavior, once you've mastered that, you're kind of good to go. Like, there isn't that much more to learn from that point on. All right, hopefully that makes some sense. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this can, change your life a little bit. There's some links in the description if you'd like to learn more about the Beyond Compulsion method. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.